welcome to the Chandigarh Lalit Kala Akademi, Nanak, and it's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's also been a pleasure for me to be here.
You've been part of the Art Week for the last 4 days, and I'm sure it must be, for someone like you, a great experience, and to be listening to people you worked with also, and
my colleagues,
and listened to before. So tell us a little about your experience of the Amrita Sher-Gil
It's been fascinating. It's so wonderful. The first thing is that to have a seminar, to have a symposium, to have the exhibition that Diwan brought here, in a city like Chandigarh, and in this, in the Sylvian surroundings, and also in this idyllic atmosphere. The first thing is that it was absolutely like it's absolutely like a haven, out here with so much of trees and because mostly we have those seminars and symposiums in big cities with too much of traffic snarls and noise and behind with the hustle and bustle.
True.
But here absolutely we are as if we were sitting in a garden, looking at the Shivalik hills, discussing and exchanging notes with my colleagues and talking to some of the stalwarts of the art field of that. So people like Diwan and Navina, they were talking about Amrita. And who is then Amrita?
Yes.
And the Amrita is such a power, such an icon, that she cuts across all boundaries, all nations, all geographies. I mean, she is kind of an international, she is a kind of an international star. We can really limit her to an Indian modernist painter, the kind of iconic status over the years that she has achieved. So the kind of people like Amrita is made of, they cuts across boundaries and geographies.
Right. So Nanak, tell us a little about your experience with, not experience, but how you see Amrita to take it further from there as a curator, as someone who's very close to the arts, as someone who has, written a lot about the arts and is very, very close to modern as well as modern art, because we see Amrita only as a woman painter who cut many boundaries and, and was cosmopolitan and emerged when not much was happening in the Indian art scene in terms of women painters. So what is your take on Amrita?
No, first thing, I don't believe that Amrita should only be, bracketed like as a woman painter.
Which she never wanted to also.
And for us, for the sake of art history, she's not even that. We don't even think her as a woman painter. She is one of her early modernists. She's as strong, her presence is as strong as one of the few early modernists, like Rabindranath Tagore, Amrita Sher-Gil, and probably, Rabindranath Tagore to an extent.
That also.
They were Aya. So these three were stalwarts in the sense of, with the so-called, when the modernist, where we start, when we canonize, when you look at the canons of Indian modern art, if you have to build the canons of Indian modern art, they're where we exactly start. Rabindranath Tagore from the east and Amrita. And why I also mentioned the name of Rabindranath Tagore, because there is another history related to it, because we can't come to Rabindranath unless we talk about Rabindranath Tagore. So, and when we talk about Amrita, we don't see her as whether she was a woman painter or a male painter or a man painter or nothing like that. She was a painter by her own strength and by her own merit, and she has swam in the cultural pools of Paris, in Hungary, mostly in the cultural pools of Europe. And because I would like to quote her that once she mentioned that Matisse, Cézanne and all this belongs to Europe, but India belongs to me. So that's where it started, that's where it started, that Amrita created her own vocabulary, own language. Probably she was overwhelmed by seeing the European masters, but at the same time maybe she liked Gauguin and she wanted to do something. She wanted to incorporate Gauguin's painting to her. But when we look at her work art historically, if you want to, because art historians are like sleuths, they really want to go back to the root. So I give you a small example why I'm saying this. Suppose if you look at English landscape paintings, when you look at the paintings of Constable or these people, you will see that if you have to really fathom the work of English landscape painters, you also have to study Dutch landscape paintings. Because these painters must have seen and they had seen Dutch landscape paintings, and they corrected themselves, they appropriated themselves.
Right.
This how art historically, this how it comes, the language you appropriate yourself. So it's also the same for Amrita. She saw Gaga, right, and she appropriated it, or rather I would say she corrected it.
Okay.
I remember one well-known art critic, KB Goel, said she corrected, because suppose I read Chuktai, and then I write, I'm influenced by Chuktai, then I as a writer living in the 2000s or 90s, when I'm writing, I correct myself according to my environs. I correct the language of Chuktai, though maybe I'm influenced.
True.
You know?
I understand.
So that's how the influences work.
Okay.
You correct yourself.
We didn't think of this.
Yeah, because art historically we think, we walk it like that.
Right.
Where this language comes from. Because you don't bring out the language from your mother's womb, or you just, because this notion of the so-called that original thing, which I think is absolutely a sham.
Okay.
Because the modernists used to think that we are now going to create something which is heralded, which was not done before, which is not going to be, there be after. And the problem with the modern is, one of the flaws with modernism is basically this, because in the school days of modernism, Parul, people used to think that what I am going to create, what I am going to paint on the canvas is something very original, and I am going to create a masterpiece, and so the signature, I am signing it. Nobody has done it before, nobody has done it afterwards. But where the fallacy lies. Okay. Because the moment is, he also comes from an influence system. He or she was also born in a cultural pool or a cultural space. So he must have seen something. He must also, emerge from an atmosphere. Yes. So when he or she sees that there is an influence, he then try to hide that. Okay. This is the lie of modernism. So that nobody will tell me, so that Parul shouldn't tell me, oh, your writing is becoming something like Rajdeep Sardesai. True. So I hide those mannerisms. Completely. But today the postmodernists are not like that. If somebody like Atul Dodiya is going to paint, and if he is influenced by Albesh Durer or by Bhupen Kakkar, he will keep that. Yes, I am influenced by him. Right. So also there is the notion of rubbishing the masterpiece. There can be no masterpiece. Oh, interesting. Yes. Okay. So it becomes very democratic also, and it becomes very truthful also. Okay, and that's an interesting point. Okay. So the signature is no more important. So today, even the current practices, you will see that signature is not that important. The collaboration is more important. Okay. Collaboration and assemblages and references and pastiches. Why these are so important? When you see the present installations. That's right. The cartage artists. If you look at the work of Atul Dodiya. Yes. Which you talked about yesterday. Yes. Why? Yes. That is not plagiarism. No. There's a notion of rubbishing the signature. Okay. Of rubbishing the idea, the notion of a masterpiece, that nothing has been done before, nothing has been done. What I'm going to do is going to be for the future, heraldic. Nobody has done it before. People will say, "Oh, see, a star is born." Yes. This because all these postmodernists are actually, addressing this. Okay. To this eel of modernism. Okay, very interesting. This is really interesting. And you were yesterday talking about the history and the art and history of art and the influences, and if you could take that, what is our modernism, because that's something that we could not really go further because of lack of time. So, and you had very, very interesting observations on modernism, and which you talked about right now also. And also about the history of Indian modernism being influenced by European art and still continuing to, like you mentioned earlier. So if you could talk about that as somebody who studied art so closely and for so many years. If I have to ask you, what were the two most important events in the history of the world after the Renaissance in Europe? The number one, in 1443, Portuguese ships sailed to sub-Saharan Africa. And by 1887, there was a conference in Berlin, which we refer to as the Berlin Conference. It was observed there, it was witnessed there, that 2/3 of the world's wealth was under middle class and upper class white male. Right. And most of the world, and like say, we became a colony. Yes. And we became British colony because we could have been a French colony, had the French not been lost to the British, to Robert Clive. Or we could have been a Spanish colony if there was not a freak accident on the Cape of Good Hope.
Yes.
This interview would have been taking place in Spanish. And we all became the subjects of the British Empire. Your grandfathers, my grandfather, we all became. We were colonized. Colonized to that extent that they even changed our language.
Right.
Our language became vernacular, and their language is still a language. Because we always refer to European languages as language.
You're right.
And Hindi, Punjabi, Gurmukhi, Bengali, Assamese, Tamil, they are vernaculars.
Completely. Absolutely.
You should have to understand this cultural space. This understanding of cultural space is very, very, very important. Even I was reading yesterday, during lunch, I was having this, probably your paper, Indian newspaper. It was written somewhere there, the crisis depends in Middle East. Maybe some subby has done that intro to the headlines. It was tucked away in a corner. I didn't go into the story, what was the new crisis. But I look at the term, this sub-editor doing this headline for Indian Express, crisis depends in Middle East. The moment you think of Middle East, where is this Middle East? It's somewhere on the west of Chandigarh, where I'm reading this newspaper. Yes. But why is she referring to as Middle East? Because somebody in the west, they see it as Middle East. Yes. So what is your take on this? So we are looking through somebody else's prism even now. The nomenclatures, the culture, even the paraphrases, the colonial paraphrases, we are still continuing with that. Even a few days before, even in a reputed, newspaper, I will mention the name.
Ji.
They were doing a story on Mayo College,
right.
Ajmer,
right.
And it was written there, the Sarasanic facade of the Mayo College. You show me a single term, art historical term or a cultural term like this that describes a European architecture which carries a religious connotation. Do we really call it a Catholic spire? We don't call it a Catholic spire, we call it a Renaissance.
Yes.
Do we really call it a Methodist wall? No, we don't call it a Methodist wall, we call it Gothic.
Yes.
So why? We describe our art and architecture, and we are still continuing those colonial phrases, saying them through their eyes. This is exactly what happened when it became a colony. The colonists came with a baggage. You came here, I saw you came here with a hand baggage with something where you keep your personal belongings.
Right.
They also came with a baggage. The baggage contains the notion of modernity, that they belong to a superior culture.
Right.
That their language is a superior language. Because of that, even today, the equivalence of good education is the connotation of proper accent.
Yes.
So how do you define this cultural space then? I'm asking you.
I think we're probably nowhere.
This is not there in Japan, because they were never colonized. Do you think a Japanese man and woman, they suffer from this complex that whether they can speak good English?
No. No.
Is it any weaker race or a nation? It's still number one.
Definitely.
In terms of economy and opulence and wealth.
Definitely, for sure.
So where we go from here then?
Where do we go from here?
I'm asking you the question. So because this is my answer to your question.
Yes.
You have to understand this politics of the modern. This is the politics of the modern. And we are still perpetuating it. And my second answer to my second question that I asked, what were the two most important events in the history of the world? The second was the withdrawal of the colonies.
Yes.
The latest being East Timor, 1947 India. So these are the two most important events. So we are still affected by that we are discussing our art, our literature, our culture. Why somebody like Jhumpa Lahiri is more widely known or much sought after or, deserves more acclaim, even in newspapers like Indian Express, than equally good writer writing in Bengali somewhere in North Calcutta. Why is this?
You tell us.
Because of this, because of the modernism.
You're right.
The living of the colonies and the kind of colonies. So we have to search for a pre-modern space, a pre-modern. What were they pre-modern? We didn't have writers.
No.
We didn't have architects. We didn't have. You look at our heritage. We look at the Kushan architects. You look at the Guptas. You look at the Bamiyan Buddhas. You look at the Mauryas. You look at this museum upstairs.
Yes.
What about that? But whenever they talk about India, they talk about ancient. Do they really talk about the present?
No. No.
Because we are such answers at the lot are present. We all these modern people are, or the so-called what after modern, that we look at ourselves in this. Because modern is dated, because modern left with 1947. The moderns they left. So what are we then? Then you tell me, why was Atul anxious? Why was Atul carrying books of Paul Klee and Mondrian, and he was so anxious, you know. He was commuting every day from Ghatkopar to VT to the library. He was going to celebrate the birthday of Paul Klee and he was looking for a photograph. Why didn't he celebrate the birthday of Rabindranath Tagore or Amrita Sher-Gil?
Because we've been conditioned like that. And it still continues, the conditioning, because that's what Atul talked about yesterday, about anxieties, and so did
So you understand?
Yes.
It's also the anxiety of that absent masterpiece.
Yes.
Had Atul been growing up with the paintings of Paul Klee and Mondrian, had he been a, you know, if he was born in Europe, this wouldn't have been the case.
No.
Not to this extent.
So how do you see it changing? How do you see it changing as, how do you see it going ahead from this?
It's changing, it's changing. It's changing really. You have to more travel into the vernacular spaces rather than. No, also it's changing with the dismantling of this idea. It's also changing with the dismantling of this idea. Because the so-called logocentric Renaissance view of painting, how I look at a painting, the logocentric Renaissance view, it has totally collapsed. The so-called institution of art, that what they teach art in the art colleges, have been dismantled.
Okay.
And the so-called art has opened up to new disciplines like photography, like journalism, like sports medicine, like literary criticism, semiotics, linguistics. And for that you see a result like those moving installation like one like Diwan, what we saw yesterday at.
Yes, the show. Absolutely.
So how do you explain that, Diwan's work?
It came from around him. It came from within him.
Yes,
it was inspired by what was happening right beside him. Mm-hmm. He did not get it from outside his own space.
That's where which means that he has already dismantled.
Yes, that purview of yes, which you see a lot of as a curator, as a writer of art, and as. Do you see a lot of young artists doing that? Is it?
There are very few.
Yes.
But that is my job, to seek those engaged spaces.
Right.
To look for somebody who is, involved in that kind of, somebody like Tallur. Tallur is into it.
Okay.
People like Tallur.
And your job as a curator, if you could talk a little about yourself here, and as an outsider, as somebody who has over the years seen the art space, the artists, the influences change, if not radically, little by little. And if we could also talk a little about how you see it in the next few years as a curator, and your job as a curator also. And remember you mentioning that sometimes you as curators also need to step in a little bit more and add your own influences to it. So a little about yourself and your journey as a curator, as a interpreter of art, as somebody who has seen the art world so closely, which many people don't get a chance to see. And if you could comment on that and your journey also.
Our journey started at least 2 decades or 3 decades back, to be precise. When I started my career as an art writer, as an art critic with the Statesman, one of the finest dailies in India. Now we can't say the same thing about the Statesman anymore. But Parul, and then when we started our career as an art critic or an art writer, there was nothing as a curator. If you go by the term, if you take a dictionary term of curator, is to curate,
Keeper, it's a keeper.
It's a curator, or you curate a space,
yes.
of flowers or a gardener or something.
Yes.
Then how we became curators, there was no, well at least I don't have a degree in curation, so how I became a curator.
Yes.
It was we became curators overnight, you know, because it was a very, I really don't want to explain, because our role from being an art critic or an art historian to curation is really absolutely funny, because we have to do shows for art galleries. For them, so it became a very phenomenon, you know, of late during the mid-90s to become curators, but we were appointed commissioners by Lalit Kala. So what is a curator? We have to arrange shows. What are we basically? So even the galleries are doing it. So are we going to do a critical evaluation of the paintings? That's what we are doing as an art critic. So how do you explain the anatomy? How do you decipher the anatomy of a curator? Who is a curator then? So now slowly over the years we are evolved, now we are seeking that space to be a curator, and we are learning what it needs to curate. But initially it was that, is it there that we should go there and tell people that you should hang this picture here, hang that image there, or there should be you write for the catalog and all that. So from slowly we developed ourselves, but in the meantime, people outside, they expected a lot from the curator, that they would do their job dutifully and seriously and sincerely, but this has not been done here.
It hasn't.
We failed our promises to deliver, and we also deferred in our responsibility. We kind of erred in our responsibility. So initial years there was an aberration, and till now I won't say that the curators or the curation have been of any meaningful activity here in the subcontinent, in Asia. But there are people, those who are, you know, bringing together and creating a space where that help people to navigate and abandon and come out with, you know, the tropes of awareness that these artists, they assimilate in their art practice, that spew forth gut level reactions to the environments that they live in.
Yes.
And then where they talk about gender deprivation, hierarchies that prevail, the dogmas, the ecological disaster, etc., etc., etc.
Yes. So you see a lot of that happening.
Happening and need a lot to happen.
You talked about the responsibility of a curator. Personally, what do you think when you curate a show?
So far, I think that there was something something is lacking. I really have to do something more responsibly. Mostly, you know what, I listen mostly to the diktats of so many agencies, to the vested interests, say when I'm working for a private gallery. So if you really want an honest answer, no, I was not responsible.
And anything that, of all the shows that you have created, if you could talk about some which... The
only show which I think is of consequence, and of two shows that I would like to tell you that which I think I was really responsible, in the sense I can say responsible, that where I was more honest, was the one that I curated for Lalit Kala for the Pan-Asia Pacific Biennale, where I was given a free reign and freedom, and I tried to create up and build up a space where I was more concerned that I'm representing India, so I have to be more honest about my effort. And the last one, which is going on in Tokyo, because again in an extent, though it is now taking place in a private gallery, in one of the finest galleries of the world, Espace Louis Vuitton, I think that I was in a way indirectly representing India. So I was very careful, and I wanted to be very honest and truthful in my representation, how I'm building up my site. The show will be on till May 5th. It opened last month on 25th.
Tell us a little about the show.
The show is, I was invited by Espace Louis Vuitton. This is about, Louis Vuitton, you know, is a well-known brand all over the world.
Yes.
It opened the first gallery in the headquarters in Paris in 2005 or 6, if I'm not wrong. And this they opened up in Tokyo in 2011, and my show is the 5th in that venture.
Okay.
So they invited me to do a show there that would represent, you know, the art activity, what is taking place in the subcontinent. So they wanted to share with me my experiences and wanted to get a feel of what's happening in art practice, how people are engaged in art practice. So, so I kind of, I made a mental list because I've been seeing, because I think, Parul, to be a curator, to be an art critic, what is very important is that seeing is very important. Seeing, I mean, S-E-E-I-N-G. The more you see, the more the world opens up for you. Because the important tool of art criticism or say curating is, seeing is very important. Unless you see, you won't be able to reach anywhere.
Right.
Because there is no such thing as, armchair criticism or armchair curatorship. You can't be an armchair curator.
Okay.
You have to travel a lot. You have to know what things are, what is happening where. And there's so many, before there were only 4 major art centers, but because of opening up the crucial disciplines of art disciplines, there are so many towns, so many art colleges, so many art activities taking place everywhere, because exciting things are happening in Kerala. And we were talking about so much of the center and periphery. I really don't know which is the center, which is the periphery. It is also, the places have become very democratized. Periphery is coming to the center is going to the periphery, so it's a kind of an amalgamated spaces. The spaces are opening up.
Okay.
So it is not that it is only,
restricted to galleries.
Yeah, I don't believe in this periphery and this, because rather the periphery is in the mind. Like that, I told you about this, the sub-editor in the Indian Express who wrote that Middle East.
Yes.
So it's so you need to travel, you need to see a lot. So for that, for the showing, especially with I traveled, I tried to see as much as well as possible, and then I started a mental deduction. I started deducting one by one, because you cannot accommodate everyone under the same roof. Though it was quite a tall roof, though it was quite a different kind of a gallery. I mean, it's a gallery, a contemporary art gallery. I've never seen a ceiling reaching the sky. It's such if you even click on the Google that is possibly with you will see the gallery yourself. You will find it. It's a huge gallery. It's a lovely gallery. It's with so much of in the morning, if you want the daylight to come, you can take as much as of daylight. You can see the city all yourself, the skyscrapers of Tokyo all around it, and in the night you soak in all the night light. So it's a unique gallery. I don't know who designed it, because they told me the name, but I forgot the name right now here, because it's a very difficult Japanese name. It's a wonderful gallery. So that's how I came to 4 people. One studied in Baroda, one in Shantiniketan, one in Rabindra Bharati, and the senior most from Government Art College, Kolkata. So we have all these 4 people got together.
Okay.
And they all traveled with me all the way to Tokyo. They installed the pieces there.
Okay.
Now they are back. Okay. Now the show will be on. So.
Okay. So this is your latest.
So if you happen to go there.
Yes.
Before 5th May, try to visit the show.
Okay. Okay. And tell us a little about what you're doing now. Anything interesting? An interesting project?
I'm interested project. I mean, too much of contemporary sometimes also bother me. Too much of contemporary sometimes bothers me a lot. So now I'm working on the Sufis of medieval Deccan.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I'm working upon a book. So I don't know when it will come about. So I'm working.
A little about what.
This is a place because between 1300. After the fall of the mighty Chalukyans and also the Jadavas and all, the Bahmanis took power in places like Bijapur or Gulbaga and Golconda and all that. Though it started, the first Bahmani was in. They revolted against the Tughlaq. Tughlaq, the first Bahmani. And he first made his capital in Gulbaga, then later the capital was shifted to Bidar, and then all this Bahmani sultanates, it sprang all of it came up in Gulbaga, Bidar, Bijapur. So this place witnessed the influx of Sufis during the medieval period in hordes. 4 kinds of Sufis, The Chistis, they came first. Then Ghizuddin Deru Nawaz. Then the Chistis, after the Chistis, A lot of Sufis, the Shataris, the Ahmadis, the Naqshbandis, and they all built khankas. And Sufi, why I say this, and with the Bahmanis and with the contact with the Sufis, though initially they came as a warrior, but it became a very, very benign space later was they spread. You know what Sufism is all about. It was absolutely a spiritual space.
Absolutely.
And also at the same time, the Bahmani rulers were very syncretic in their thoughts. During the Muharram, they start with the Ganesh Bandhana. With the Ganesh Puja, they start with the Muharram procession. Even for any musical evening or something, they start with the Saraswati Bandhana.
Right.
It was so syncretic. So I'm talking about the architecture of Golconda, Bijapur, and also of the 4 different important Sufis. So this is, I'm planning, I'm working on the map, I'm traveling to and fro to.
For this project?
Yeah.
Okay. So it will be illustrated.
Illustrated with, of course, with images. With the art of that period, with the medieval Deccan paintings, miniature paintings, architecture, all this. Music.
Nanak, yesterday we were just on the fringe, we were talking about the anxieties of the Indian artist, and Anju beautifully presented it, and Atul also talked about it, and Sadanand Menon in his lecture also touched upon how the commerce of the art fairs and where are we as compared to where is the art and where is the art fair. So if you could shed some light on these things which we talked about, but we could not really come to any.
Now since the market has crashed and the honeymoon is over, because we remember when the boom came, 2006, 7, 8.
Yes.
When all this started, even the art fair. I felt that all these people, they were running really on a treadmill and reaching nowhere. They were simply running on a treadmill and reaching nowhere. But the point is, today the situation is this: they have to look inwards. There's a sense of introspection. And again, if I come back to the anxiety of language, the anxiety, the personal anxiety, and the anxiety of art practice, again we have to go back to that modernistic space, then come back and where it's all started. Even with a modernist painter, I spoke to some. I remember a very senior painter telling to me that it was during the 50s and when the partition came, and they got freedom and all that. And after that, when it was freedom, the so-called 1947, it was a young nation state, and there was anxiety, that they had to be at par with. But now anxiety is of a different kind. So it's there.
And your take on the art fairs, the rising number of art fairs in the country, and what is there? It
started on a different note. It's really started on a different note, but now it has taken it. Happily it is really taking the right direction.
It is.
It is even more democratic, and different versions of the art fair are taking place today. It was not only art fair driven only by the art galleries, only by the dealers, but today even art fair, an art fair last year where Diwan was there with me, it was only driven by the artists, and there has been being the Kochi Muziris where 2 people, they got together and they got more of their colleagues and they huddled together and gave birth to the Kochi Muziris Biennale.
So what is the role of an artist that you see in not only art promotion but taking art to the next level? Do you think Indian artists lack that initiative, or where do you see Indian art in those terms?
It's just to work, that's all. Because at the end of the day, what you are left with is nothing but work. One has to engage mostly with their own work, and there's nothing else. You as a writer, you have to engage with your writing. I as a curator have to engage with my curation, reading, writing, and looking at things. And for an artist, at the end of the day, while we are talking about them, we are only talking them because of their work.
Yes.
And nothing else.
Yes.
They have to engage more and more with the work and nothing else.
Right. So that is
the final thing. Otherwise, we don't have any existence at all. Parul doesn't have any existence. Nanak Ganguly doesn't have any existence. except their work. It simply doesn't matter. Who are you or who am I? You are talking to me because of my work.
Yes.
I'm talking to you because of your work.
Yes.
And nothing else matter. Nothing else in this whole cosmos matter.
Except the work.
Except the work. Nothing else matters.
Now, there was a lot of talk also on museums and the role of museums, especially in a country like India, and how we lack a lot of initiative, there's a lack of funds, there's a lack of many things. But if you could, as a curator...
I don't want to talk about that because it will come up with the same thing of the red tapeism and the bureaucracy.
But there must be something good happening here also, in the museums, which we don't see.
Some private museums, yes. Some people are coming.
But
still, you have to question the power, because the museum, the so-called museum, the strong muscle, the muscle of the museum that the museum is made of, the Sadanand mentioned yesterday, though V1 didn't agree to it. I think as it started, if you look at the concept of the museum, the first Indian museum, which was an imperial museum, why it was there? Because the British, the imperialists, wanted to show people that people would come, the citizens of India would come and see, this is your art, this is your... So there was a hidden power, because even when you select something for a museum, a power speaks. Because if I'm giving the director of a museum, because if I institute a museum tomorrow, it is my prerogative, it is my power, that when I dictate that he or he, what they would come and see in the museum. It is there. That is the thumb rule there. So the museum is for that. I think the whole country is a museum. You should go more to, rather than to find, art objects in a museum,
Yes.
To go and see in a particular museum, we should preserve everything in this country, even a tree here, even the stone lying next to the river. We are destroying everything and we are finding something very valuable, something very priceless inside a museum. Why it is that? Because museum is ultimately to do with muscle, with the power. And when the muscle gets feeble, all these things happen, they become derelict. There's no one to paint, the bromide's falling off. So the whole concept of museum starts with muscle. So when you become weak, you don't go to the gym anymore. So that happens in the museum.
That's an interesting connotation. Thank you, Nanak.
Anytime, my pleasure.
It was a great interaction, and thank you so much.
Thank you.